I now call this special regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Beck, would you please read the board priorities?
Yes, sorry. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Klein-Jerome, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement, excuse me, enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement, education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome. Right before we go into presentations, I just want to note for everyone here and watching at home, Director Potts is participating remotely. He is here tonight as well as everyone else in attendance. With that, we will move on to presentations. I will turn it over to Superintendent.
Well, today's presentation sparked off of something that Vice President Hayes said. She spoke about purposity and how she keeps her eyes on that, making sure that she's trying to close the opportunity gaps for our students, which got us thinking that the school year is getting ready to start, and we wanted to do a formal presentation of several vehicles that we have inside of our district to help close the opportunity gaps for our students. Earlier on in the year, you saw one by Mr. Vondran about Have Life and how that helps close the gaps for our students. And so we wanted to share some similar programming with you. We're very fortunate today to have Jenny Holupnik with us, who is kind of the coordinator, the community coordinator for Opportunity for All. And we have Sarah Brennan with us today as she's our Davenport Schools employee. She's one of our grant managers, but also does many other things for us today. And they're going to talk about ways that we support and tear down barriers for our families. So thank you both so much for coming with us today for this presentation. I think this is a great timing to help kick this off at the beginning of the school year. So Jenny, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, great. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's exciting to share with you some of the great results we've had over the last 4 or 5 years as we've worked with Davenport schools to figure out how we can best remove barriers to your students for opportunity. So if you would forward to the next slide, let me just share with you kind of our overall vision of where we're going and how this works. We believe that community collaboration is key to closing these opportunity gaps for your students. So you see on the left that we have a student who comes into our schools with some missed opportunities, some gaps in either their learning or their resources or whatever it may be. That need is identified by someone in your school system. We know they're very good at that, and they see these needs regularly and need opportunities to fulfill those needs and help meet those gaps. So that's where we come in with different programming supports that the Davenport Schools has kind of collectively put under the umbrella of Opportunity for All. And we pull in the community resources to really make those happen. We think that's a key function, is to not just doing things in-house, but really relying on the community to come around us. So we'll talk a little bit more specifically about Purposity today, and then also what we call the Opportunity for All mini grants. And then those students then get to engage in those opportunities with the help of their parent or guardian, their instructors and coaches, and the community resources. And finally, the student does benefit both academically, obviously, but also in other ways through social supports, connections, less risky behavior, and so forth. So that's kind of the overall philosophy and model for what we're trying to do. I'm going to invite Sarah to talk more specifically about Purposity now, and then I'll come back and share with you about Opportunity for All.
Thanks, Jenny. Next slide, please. So what is Purposity? So we all have apps on our phones, most of us, and we know how apps work, and Purposity is no different. However, Purposity is very unique in that it provides our community members with an opportunity to purchase a need for a student or a family. Proposity anonymously connects community members to our students anonymously, and I really want to point that out here. It follows all FERPA guidelines. It also is at no cost to our district whatsoever. The only thing here is that it provides tremendous return for our students and communities. So for example, if you're walking down the street in your neighborhood and you see a student or a child whose shoes are really tattered and torn and you want to do something about it, but you just don't know how, Proposity bridges that gap for us. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about, well, what does that look like in our school district? So here's a little bit of a flow chart of how Proposity works. So you're a staff in a building, and by staff I mean anyone and everyone in that building, custodians, school counselors, teachers, secretaries, finds a student in need of shoes, or maybe they know that the student maybe recently found permanent housing after experiencing homelessness. Well, that staff member then alerts the school counselor. The school counselor then submits a Google form, which is then uploaded to our school social workers. From there, that school social worker will upload that need to Proposity. Proposity then uploads that need within 48 hours. The community is then notified of that need on their cell phone, so a push notification or an email, and it will say, there is a new need in your community, click here to help. And that item is then purchased by our community members via Amazon. And then the item is delivered directly to the school and given to the student. So again, it is all anonymous. The community member doesn't even see the specific item. So they don't get to see that they're white Ked sneakers. They just know they're buying size 12 sneakers for a 6th grade student, because we don't want to be able to identify that in the community. Next slide. So these are just an overview of some of the items purchased. This is not an exhaustive list. So we recently were able to provide bedding for a family that experienced a house fire. There was a student in 6th grade who needed a new bike to get to school. Winter boots, we provided a lot of winter boots to Proposity this last year. Pull-ups for a single mom whose child attended one of our preschools. Clothing for a student living in a homeless shelter. There was a student at Monroe who really wanted some art supplies because during COVID, they weren't able to really use their artistic expression at home, and so we provided them, or Proposity provided them with art supplies. And mattresses for families experiencing housing instability as well. Next slide. So these were our outcomes for this last school year. The average amount spent per need was only $32, right? So not a lot of money here when it comes to providing some of the most basic needs for our students. The total amount of needs purchased were $6,818 for a total need met of $215. On your right is kind of what Proposity looks like on our phones. We're at 994 followers. I would love to leave here today to have 1,000. So if you don't have Proposity on your phone, please download it. There are no needs right now because we're not in school, but I anticipate that once school starts, our needs will tick right back up. And two other things here is that we were the first school district in Iowa to launch this, which is pretty exciting, and that there has never been a time where a need was just lingering on Proposity. Our community wants to help, and this does just that. And I think that was it for mine. Yeah.
All right, so the Opportunity for All mini grant program kind of picks up where Proposity leaves off. So if you'll go to the next slide. While Proposity is really kind of meeting physical needs of students, tangible things that you can get on Amazon, Opportunity for All steps in and tries to meet needs of students that are more experience-based and perhaps relational in those ways. And so, for example, we have a lot of students who have opportunity gaps in that they don't have the opportunity to participate in sports, music, theater, those kinds of opportunities. They don't have the resources at home to do that, or sometimes they don't even just know what those opportunities are, or they have transportation barriers, something to that effect. We also work with students who maybe have need to take a test. We've helped students take their CNA test after doing their classwork, didn't have the resources to pay for a test. So Opportunity for All is really kind of a broad opportunity for us to meet the needs of any of your district students who have a financial barrier. So this student here was working on her dance this summer. We like to partner with those in the community, and in particular, Above the Bar Dance Studio came to us and said, hey, we'd love to get some of your students involved, and they paid scholarship for every student who wants to dance this last summer. And we just helped pay for their leotards and their performance attire. So that's a way that we partner with those in the community to make this happen, and we think that's really valuable. Next slide, please. Some of the distinctives for Opportunity for All, you mentioned Have Life earlier. That's a great program too that serves a lot of your students. You may be wondering kind of how Opportunity for All is different. And some of the ways that we're different is, first, we are K through 12 for any student, any age, any building is available to apply for Opportunity for All. We have a real quick turnaround of 3 to 5 days, so we can have a teacher reach out to us and say, hey, I've got a student who wants to go to this camp, this weekend, and all of a sudden, they don't have the right shoes, or they don't have this that they need, and we can serve that need quickly. There's no timeline for deadlines, so we kind of have a rolling calendar, and therefore they're able to apply at any time and ask for resources, even in the summer. We're pretty nimble to meet specific needs, and we're not specifically, it has to be sports, or it has to be music, or anything like that. And we do work really tightly with community partners. I visit most of our community partners personally to let them know who we are and look at ways to partner with them, so that increases the value of what we're doing. Next slide, please. This is an example. We started back in 2017 with TJ's really idea and his initiative to start this. He came to 180 and said, I'd like to get this going. Can you guys help us? And so we collaborated on that. Ben Driscoll was also a big part of that team at the beginning. And so we started back in 2017, and this is how we've used our money in the last 4 years. You can see it's grown. It had a little dip there with COVID being shut down, but we were back up to about where we stopped last year. The blue is how much money we've actually spent out of our OFA fund, and the orange is how much the market value was for those awards after we count in the free resources that we use from our community partners. So you can see we have about 3 times the value of the awards going out when you look at the market value, thanks to the partnerships we've created. Next slide, please. This last year in particular, we did give out 63 grants to students in 16 buildings with an average award of about $73. I will say that seems low. Most awards where we're actually paying out are closer to $150, $200, but we have so many awards that are actually free to us, like the dance and whatnot, that it brings that average down. 75% of students are at Title I buildings, and 63% of our students are minority students. Next slide, please. Our funding comes from Kiwanis. They gave us a seed grant to start, $25,000 spread over 5 years. We've also had contributions from 180, private donors, some of your class reunions, and we did a fundraiser this year for the first time that yielded $4,500. So we're always looking to increase our support. Once that seed money goes away from Kiwanis, I'd love to find a stable support base that we can continue on, and ultimately I'd love to be able to serve 500 students a year or more. I think there's enough need in our community to do that as we grow and continue to build support. So last slide. These are a couple examples. We sent one of our 7th graders from SMART to a national dance competition with her majorette troupe in Miami. We collaborated with another community group to make sure she had the resources to go be part of that trip. Next slide. We partnered with your head coach from North High School to identify 2 basketball players who were able to participate in a week-long overnight Nike basketball camp. Those 2 scholarships to attend that camp were donated to us by 2 families who had intended to send their kids last year, and it got shut down due to COVID. So they knew about 180, and they said, we would like to donate these scholarships. So we worked with the coach to identify some students who would benefit from that week-long there. Next slide. We also had several kids participate in summer camp for their Boy Scout troop, and that's a pretty expensive opportunity when you look at multiple kids in one family going, so we're able to help supplement their ability to do that and learn. Next slide. And we've also worked really hard to promote music and the arts as well, and so we provided instruments of, I think, 14 in 1 year. This is just Monroe's need for first-time musicians to play in their beginning band. They didn't have enough instruments to cover them all, so we found used instruments and used Opportunity for All resources to make sure they were repaired and in good condition and gave them to the students to use. So those are some examples of what we've done. Last slide. How you can get involved if you're on staff at Davenport Schools. We invite you to make a request to Proposity or to the Opportunity for All mini grant program through your building counselor or social worker. they are aware of how to make those requests, and you could contact them to do that. And if you're a community member or supporter, we invite you to download Proposity. We'd love to see that reach 1,000, like Sarah said. And also donations to Opportunity for All are made through the Davenport Schools Foundation, which is one of our partnering groups on this project as well. So that's the gist of it, and we'd welcome your questions.
Director Beck.
I remember first hearing about the Proposity app a couple years ago, and it was very exciting. And so I'm glad to see that it's working and that it goes beyond just the Proposity app. So thank you for the presentation. So I know the needs are identified by teachers and counselors in the schools. I'm wondering, are there students who maybe we don't quite reach that way if they're very quiet students, or, the needs maybe aren't super obvious? Do we have an outreach plan, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I would just say that, in the buildings that we have great relationships with our students, whether that's the secretary or a special ed teacher. And so we're really counting on our district staff in that building to say, hey, I noticed that Susie's shoes are really tattered and torn, or hey, I know that they're experiencing homelessness. Maybe there's something that we can do about that. We also have a homeless liaison with our district who is very good about letting the school counselors know, hey, don't forget about Proposity or Opportunity for All, that is something that student could benefit from. And also something here to think about too is that if a student is experiencing homelessness, they're identified through our system, and if there's multiple family members, we would make sure that, let's say it's a student at SMART, but then they have siblings at, West High School. Well, what are the needs that maybe their siblings might need as well?
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Director Hayes.
Thank you. Awesome presentation. And I would really like to challenge all my board members to take part in this. It's an awesome program, and it is very confidential. I've had a few experiences with it, and the people are just elated to get the items. The counselor will go back and forth through you. And actually, one of the little people that I worked with, she had her send me a thank you note. I came here one night, and the note was here thanking me for what I had done. I had a teacher reach out at one point that they needed headphones for their Chromebooks. And there was like 2 or 3 people that met that need. So all the needs are legitimate, and, they're really thankful for them. So, the community board members, cabinet, everyone, I would encourage everyone to take part in this, because we all have a vested interest in the students, and it would be wonderful to help those that are in need.
Director Klein Jerome.
You talked about the counselors knowing about this program well. Do you do some presentation for teachers and paras and everybody else in the building so that they're aware of this?
Yes, so when we launched this, it was an expectation that all building principals building principals and counselors were made aware of this, and all your school counselors are the point of contact for Proposity as well. And so I think we've done a really great job at putting that out there in our buildings, letting all of the staff know that this is something that we can utilize in our buildings for our students.
I'll just add that when we launched Opportunity for All several years ago and ongoingly, we've been making presentations during your professional development days on Wednesdays to many of the buildings, not every building, but those who have some of the highest needs that we went to. Ben Driscoll and I visited those buildings in person to make sure the staff was aware as well. And I know this year they did a good job of following up and sending out reminders to the counselors and whatnot, so that it wasn't just a one-time, here's this information, but it was, there was some follow-up as well.
And I forgot to add, Dr. Jake Klipsch, when he was in charge of his previous role, he did a great job at about every quarter or every semester, he would send out an entire district email. So it went to all DCSD staff about these opportunities as well.
Oh, great.
So I anticipate, actually, I know come this fall, there'll be another email district-wide saying, here are these opportunities, don't forget about these.
Director Beck.
Just to piggyback off of that, as a parent, I remember hearing about it, Purposity specifically, I think, from a friend or from an e-blast. And so I would encourage you all to, make sure that every school includes that, maybe twice a year or something like that in the e-blast, just to remind us that it's there, because I have it on my phone and I'd used it, but I haven't used it in a while because I had the notifications turned off.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things, well, plus COVID and everything went weird. But it's one of those things that's easy to forget. So, but you don't want to bombard people with it either. Yeah. But, there are lots of parents who would contribute if they could. And so maybe just letting them know that it's there once or twice a year would be a good idea.
Yes, I'll let our new ILD know that.
Yeah.
Thank you both for the presentation. A lot of information there. I did literally just download that app. So
I vouch for that. I watched him do it.
Now you just have to
a-
follow Davenport Schools after you download it. Again, no needs, but there will be come this fall, I promise.
And now I'm going to have to catch up with Director Hayes here so we can get a friendly little competition
There
going.
you go. Perfect. Anything to help our students.
That's it. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Are there any other questions, comments? Again, thank you both very much for taking some time out to show us these awesome programs are greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our second presentation, I'd like to introduce Dr. Willie Barney. He comes to us from multiple experiences that are definitely going to add to our cabinet level. Dr. Barney is the Instructional Leadership Director for the North Region, and so far has added quite the insight to how to move forward post-pandemic. We are absolutely pleased to have you on board. So Willie, why don't you take the floor and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and how things are going so far for you.
Thank you. Excited to be a part of the district and continue the work we started here July 1. We've had lots of opportunities to get into some lifting already. So looking forward to getting students into the district, continuing to make connections with different members of the community to find ways that we can support and move the opportunities that we present students with. Come from most recently the Meskwaki Settlement School as a superintendent. I apologize, I'm losing my voice. I've spent probably the last couple of weeks on and off doing a whole lot of coaching, so I'm beginning to try to get that back now that we're on the backside of July here. So, but serving as superintendent prior to that, assistant superintendent in the Waterloo Community School District. I was in Waterloo for approximately 12 years. Prior to that, Iowa City Community School District, and just kind of continuing going back. But definitely looking forward to bringing some of the things I've learned in those other districts, as well as continuing to share the things that I learned here to serve. Personally, I'm a father of 6 beautiful children, 4 biological children and 2 that we adopted. And so my wife is also an educator. So we've found ourselves not only educating professionally, but educating at home as you raise those beautiful kids. So looking forward to being a part of the district and the work. So thank you for having me.
All of our instructional leadership, our cabinet, they've hit the ground running. We're establishing our meeting structures, and so far, the collaboration between the cabinet, I'm very impressed with. So, appreciate your leadership. Thank you for joining our team. That concludes our presentations, Mr. Goza.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And again, welcome to the district, and
Thank you, sir.
look forward to working with you. Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Klein Jerome.
First of all, the Davenport Central Boys and Girls Brady Street Sprint groups that participated came in 2nd and 3rd. It was great. It would have taken me hours to get up that Brady Hill, and I mean, they were flying by me. So that was very cool to see that relay. I'm also part of the teacher calibration meeting team that had their first meeting today, and it's focused on literacy and how they're going to roll it out. It's mainly with an emphasis on pre-K to 3. So they met with a very large group of teachers so they could hear how this was going to go, and seems very structured and a lot of thought into how they're going to put this together.
Director Beck.
I'm just going to take my opportunity at a board report to remind everyone who is eligible and able to be vaccinated to do so. We are coming up on the school year. We have just enough time, if you are 12 and older, to get fully vaccinated before classes start. With this new variant going around, it's even more important that we all protect our youngest kids who can't get vaccinated yet. So I'd just like to encourage everyone to participate.
Thank you. Brenda, would you like to step up to the microphone and we will talk about the school board election coming up?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. School board elections will be held in conjunction with the city elections on Tuesday, November 2nd. We will have 3 openings. Iowa Secretary of State and Iowa Association of School Boards have excellent materials available on their websites. So if you're interested in running for school board, you're welcome to pick up a candidate's packet from me. You may also secure the necessary documents from either of those websites. If you'd rather remain anonymous. I'm happy to answer questions. I'll refer you to others if I can't answer them, help in any way I can. Nomination papers must be filed between August 23rd and September 16th, and those do have to come back to me.
Thank you, Brenda. Are there any other board reports? Seeing none, we will move on to communications, open forum. Are there any open forums? Okay. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at the board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The open forum request is available in a hard copy for in-person attendees or online for those who want to participate in open forum virtually. The link is located on the school board page of the district's website. For those who want to participate virtually, the request must be emailed to Brenda T. by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issues presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meeting Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Anyone not in attendance but wishing to speak at open forum, call 563-445-5001 and enter the conference ID. And there are no open forum requests, in person or virtually. I almost got that timed out to where I can get my breaths in and get it all out. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I'd like to call or separate out the West High School yearbook contract.
Okay. So we will pull out item 6.02, correct?
Yeah.
And
Correct.
then, no, not on consent agenda, right? No second. On consent agenda, no. Okay. All right, so what we're gonna vote on is the consent agenda minus item 6.02. Everyone got that? All right, I'm gonna call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on item 6.02?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board approve consent agenda item 6.02 West High School yearbook contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Any discussion? Director Snyder.
I wanted to pull this out because I was sitting there over the weekend when I went through this, and I'm thinking, I don't recall ever really voting on other schools' yearbook things. And then I got to thinking, well, what about other things that come out of like school-oriented funds? Say when the drama club puts on a production, or sporting equipment for athletic teams. I mean, we just don't see those things. And then I thought, well, it has to be the dollar value. Maybe it's because it's a 3-year contract. So I was talking to Kevin earlier, and he confirmed that, yes, it is because of the dollar value. And just a good refresher, that purple sheet that's on your desk in front of you, it talks about the certain levels, like if it's less than a dollar amount, what they can just stamp, if it's non-monetary, what goes on the consent agenda, what we have to actually take forward with discussion. And then the other reason I wanted to pull that out is the business side of me then starts thinking, well, we have a 3-year contract with West for a Walsworth yearbook. What are our other schools using? And would we be able to get lower rates even for everybody if we were to consolidate and go through one company? Because anytime we could make these books more affordable so that more students could get them in their hands, I think it would be a good thing. So even though we're not really here to talk about a contract for all the schools, since this got slapped in front of us, I'd sure like to throw it out there that I think it would be worth looking at, for our middle schools and all of our high schools, to see if there would be money to be saved with one lump contract.
You're going to look into that?
Yeah, I can absolutely look into that. No, I'll write it down.
All right, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote on the consent agenda item 6.02. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Make sure I'm not missing one. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder.
I move that the board adopt the administration's recommendation for the approval of bills for the bill listing period of 7/9/21 to 7/20/21, whereas resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for several amounts. Further resolved, the payments of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of 7/9/21 to 7/20/21, with the following voided check, number 374265, for incorrect amount.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
We wanted to make the school board aware that this year, November 17th to the 18th, is the Iowa Association of School Board Annual Convention, and we plan on attending. So we are going to be making reservations for this, and so I think it's very important that we have a strong showing at this conference. This conference is paramount to collaboration, to seeing what's upcoming in the legislative sessions. It allows you an opportunity to sit with other school boards that might be going through something similar that you are, and discuss and learn, and sit along other superintendent school board teams. And so I highly urge us to go to this. We're planning on it, and we're excited about it. It's going to be an opportunity for us to gel as a team and learn from other school board superintendents from around the state. And the timing of this will be difficult as the school board elections kind of butt up to that. But Dan's been doing a lot of homework and research on what's the best way to move forward, and has a solid game plan for when that time comes. So we just wanted to make the school board aware of those dates so you can put them on your calendar.
I will add, I was on a board president's workshop for the ISB, and I did ask about if they ever considered moving to December or January because the elections got moved. And that time slot in November is literally the only one that they can get at the Iowa Event Center, and I guess that is the only event center in the state of Iowa that is big enough. Plus, it's centrally located, so I certainly don't want to have to drive all the way to Sioux City, Iowa to do something like that. So, and I did ask about that, and I know we do have 3 board members up for re-election, so 3 open seats. A board member does not have to be sworn in yet to attend. I did check on all that stuff, so because we wouldn't have a meeting, because we would have to do our meeting after. Because it has to be after the election and the canvass of votes. And I think the canvass of votes, if I'm not mistaken, come in like the day of the convention. So.
And Kent and I last time did go, and we were not officially on the board yet, and that wasn't a problem.
Okay, thank you.
And could we have a hotel that's closer to the event center this time? A little closer so we could walk.
It's all connected. You just walk through all those tunnels and get all those steps. And remember,
Not
when
where we were
staying.
staying.
You get your steps for the whole week in one day.
Yeah.
Was there anything else on
Nope,
that, Mr.
that's it.
Chairman? All right. Committee reports. No committee reports?
Policy committee meets next week.
Finance committee, you guys just went right to a workshop?
Yeah, we went to the workshop, so that was in place of our finance committee meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
And then as far as legislative advocacy, myself, Director Poston, and Superintendent did meet with Brenda T., and we're going to try to get a couple legislative meetings with the legislators. We are going to separate them by party affiliation. Just we want to get stuff done and not have a bunch of infighting. So we'd rather just split it out and get it done with both sides. So I think we're going to try to do a couple of them in November, December. So
The save the dates are going out this week.
perfect. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Did you guys have any LZAC meetings yet, or no?
Nope.
All right. All right, moving on. Items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board select 4 legislative priorities as recommended by the Legislative Committee to submit to the Iowa Association of School Boards.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I know there's going to be discussion on this. Who wants to start first?
Me.
Director Hayes.
With this, I'll just throw out my 4. Brenda, you noting what we're doing, or how are we doing it? Okay, with my 4 that I selected, I chose early literacy. Do they need to be in order or just?
No, it's fine.
Okay, early literacy, mental health, teacher recruitment and licensure, and market competitive wages. With this, I figure after coming out of COVID, there's a lot of mental health needs. We want to get a jump prior to 3rd grade, and we need someone to instruct them, and we need some marketing tools in order to recruit the best of the best.
Can you say those four again real quick? I apologize. I got early literacy, mental health.
Teacher recruitment and licensure, and market competitive wages.
Thank you. Director Klein Jerome.
I would like to see our priorities be preschool, early literacy, dropout and at-risk, and special ed state. The
Brenda, you're
preschool,
writing all this down, right? Because you got that fast shorthand.
the preschool, I think we need to, obviously, looking at our reading scores, we need to get kids early. And, you know, the fact that the current weighting is 0.5, moving it to full-time, I think would be a benefit. Obviously, early literacy, because that is one of our main focuses. Dropout and at-risk, we can't just focus on the younger kids. We got to make sure we keep them in school and get them through. And with the special ed, we need predictable funding. We need it in a timely manner. Obviously, with the spending that goes into special ed, we need to make sure that special ed services are being paid for at the cost that it's costing us.
Thank you. Director Snyder, you got your four?
The four I had were market competitive wages, early literacy, mental health, and special education federal.
Write it down. Everybody else is. Thank you. Did you want to talk on why you chose any of those, or?
No.
All right. Director Potts, do you have your four?
I do.
All right.
I have preschool, dropout prevention at risk, early lit, and teacher recruitment and licensure. No, I don't want to say anything.
It's like you're reading my mind.
I can.
Well, at least I look like I got a full head of hair from up there, right?
Hey, listen, when you're the voice from the ceiling, it sounds powerful.
The almighty Oz. All right. Director Beck.
Real quick, just a reminder for anybody in the public who might be listening, and these are the priorities that the IASB they have a lobbying arm as part of their services, and so they ask every district to tell them what their priorities are for that next year. And so we're voting on what we want as a district to be their priorities for lobbying for us. I had early literacy, dropout at risk, special ed state, and preschool. I believe those are very similar to what Director Klein Jerome had. And as a backup, teacher recruitment and licensure.
Director Poston.
I had preschool, early literacy, dropout at risk, and teacher recruitment. And the two that I think are the most important, early literacy and preschool. From our last meeting and presentation on early literacy, we all know well how low our test scores are. I think if we can concentrate on early literacy and have more preschool, a lot of the other problems down the road will go away.
And then there was only one. Mr. Superintendent, what are your four? I'm going to see what you got.
Early literacy, preschool, dropout prevention, teacher recruitment, licensure, and special education right there in the mix.
Perfect.
That's half a squiggle.
That's half a squiggle.
All right, mine were early literacy, preschool, the special ed, and the teacher recruitment.
One more time.
Early, yep. Early literacy, preschool, special ed state, and teacher recruitment. And we're pretty much doing this just like the ISB is going to do. They're going to take the 4 from every district and slash them. What were the top 4?
Brenda, what do you have?
Early lit, pre-K, dropout, teacher recruitment, and licensure. Those Matthew?
Early lit, pre-K, dropout, and what was your last one? Teacher.
Teacher license.
Yeah, that's what I have.
That good? Speak now or forever hold your peace till next year.
Okay, then I'm going to speak. The thing about the teacher recruitment that concerns me a little, the alternative teacher licensure, with COVID, suddenly it was like anybody could teach or substitute teach, and, got a little wishy-washy there. So I guess my concern is how alternative is that license going to be? I don't have problems with some of the other things, but when you get into not holding people to a license standard, that concerns me. And I feel the special ed state upping the amount should be more of a priority because it focuses on the students. So.
Director Snyder.
I shared the exact same concern in regards to the recruitment and licensure. I feel like it kind of takes away something from our teachers that, they work so hard to get their licensing and they've just gone through the steps in the training. I would hate to do something to make everything they've gone through to I guess, reduce the validity of that. And as far as the special education, I too, it's so important. If you look at some of these literacy, especially our literacy data in regards to special education, it was off the charts low. And I said federal because, frankly, I have very little hope that the current state administration, who has in recent decisions not shown a hell of a lot of support for public schools, that they would even do anything.
Thank you, Director Beck.
So for me, I share the same concerns about teacher recruitment and licensure, especially given some of the most recent decisions and legislation passed. What I do think is important at this point is funding for things like teacher intern programs, programs that are designed to recruit teachers that will better match the demographic of the student population, and loan forgiveness programs that make education careers a viable option, and in particular in the next year because of some of the decisions of our state legislature that are making it hard for us to recruit good teachers and retain good teachers. So I share the concerns about the first half of that. I think it's important that teachers have appropriate licensure, and we treat that skilled trade as such. But I also think it's important that we are going to need to be able to reach out and make it a more viable career option for other people, because we're going to start losing teachers and we can't afford to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President?
Oh, Director Potts.
Yeah, on the teacher recruitment and licensure, there have been situations where we have not been able to find industrial arts teachers, home economics teachers, guidance counselors. And in the past, we almost had a change in the procedures for guidance counselors so that they could, like a certified social worker or someone like that could serve in that role, and it was blocked. It was blocked by the universities because they wanted people to have to take all that coursework. And I always found it ironic that I believe to teach at the University of Iowa, you don't need a teacher's license, you need a degree. And the people that are teaching our teachers don't necessarily have teacher's licenses. And I just point that out as one of the ironies of higher education. I think there's a need for a little more flexibility in perhaps licensing people to teach in certain areas. Certainly not in, for example, I could see flexibility in licensing people to teach foreign languages, or industrial tech, or home economics, or some of those other, or some of the technical fields that we're moving into it at the high school with nursing careers and those kinds of things. So, we even ran into a situation with the Creative Arts Academy where the person we wanted to hire to be the dance teacher couldn't be, they were a professional dancer with a professional dance studio, but they couldn't teach because they didn't have a teacher's license. They couldn't teach dance. Some of it just seems needlessly blocking fulfilling needs we have or may have. That's all.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Postian?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the same thing, but also along those same lines, it's somewhat ironic that, we've lost a lot of good teachers through early retirement, and now we're talking about teacher recruitment. I mean, we were forced into that because of our budget, but down the road now, when we're more fiscally responsible, we'll be able to hang on to those good teachers. So, and then the other thing, when you talk about, the state legislature and everything, there's a lot of people look at the reserve that the state has, okay? And they think we should be tapping into the reserve all the time, okay? Well, do you know what kind of shape the state would have been in if we did not have a reserve as we went through COVID? And ultimately, that will have an impact on schools too. So you need to keep that in mind too. Not only do we need to be fiscally responsible, but the state needs to be fiscally responsible.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? I agree with you on the teacher licensure. I battle it every day. I went through a 4-year apprenticeship. Any Joe Blow can walk off the street and get a job before I do because I cost too much money because of all my education in my line of work. So I totally understand that. So a recap, the 4 are early literacy that we're going to vote on here. Early literacy, pre-K, teacher retention, and licensure.
Teacher retention, licensure, and dropout.
Yep. Teacher retention and dropout prevention, early literacy, and preschool. That's what we're going to vote on right now is the 4. Any other discussion before I roll to this?
Motion.
We already had the motion. Yeah. This was the discussion part.
I put the motion on the table.
Because Director Beck made the motion and you had seconded it, Director Hayes. So I will call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Next item is subject 10.02. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the Power School hosting fee and Business Plus software as written. Sorry, there's not a recommendation written in the line, so I'm kind of making it up as I go along. As proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Director Hayes.
This was somewhat confusing for me. With the 140,451.05, it states it's the grand total. Then for the second portion of it, the additional $67,000, one for 11 months and one for 13 months. Is that included in the total 140, or is that not all inclusive?
This is two parts. The 140,000 is a 3-year contract. We do the software support for 1 year at a time. I asked them to give us a 13-month quote because it was off by 1 month. So they rolled this to a 13-month quote, so everything renews at the same time each year. The first part is a 3-year contract, for 140,000 a year. The second part is the 1 year at a time software support.
So are you looking for us to approve all of it, or do you want to wait till the 9th, or?
No, all of it.
Okay, we can do it all. Okay. Thank you.
Director Beck.
So with this, next year, everything will renew at the same time, and it'll be 2 1-year contracts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Poston.
So, Kevin, do we ever look at other companies to host the server, or is that too difficult to do as far as making changes in that area?
It is very difficult. We would need to have a large gap of time if the decision is made to look at different software. We have to consider components that belongs with HR too. I don't want to give Jamie a heart attack. But it is a heavy lift, and there's a lot of components to it. It would take a study to do that. I believe that we've had this at least 10 years. We partner with, I believe, Des Moines and one other district. I can't remember which one, but we work together on that software support. So if we were to look at something different, we would need to do a study and take a full year to look at that.
So how do we find out if this is even competitively priced? I mean, do we know, or?
I can't tell you exactly what other software providers would give us, but what I would do is do an RFI, request for information, and start there and narrow down to the components that we would need service from in a district our size. With a company that services K-12 in Iowa, there's a lot of moving parts to it that we would need, so we would do an RFI just so we can get to even see if there's anyone that can provide that depth and breadth of services.
What I'm afraid of is that, in a way we're being held hostage, to whatever they want to charge us. And so that would be my concern, but I understand, what it would take to make any changes.
So you said we've been using this for about 10 years.
I believe so.
What is sort of the standard life cycle of reviewing, like Director Poston suggested?
We work with Heartland, with those other districts. So if we were to do a review, we would do that as a group.
Okay.
Power in numbers, as Director Snyder said, sometimes you can get a little more buying power if you do things together. So having 3 large school districts going together for a software provider, it would take some of those conversations and those moving parts with other districts to decide this is the time that we want to really take a deep dive into alternatives.
Okay. So basically, there's nothing at the moment that suggests that we're not having any issues or anything, correct?
Correct. In fact, we have an upgrade coming in October. So We want to have some time to, with all the new staff, to be able to utilize that, get our data correct in there, consistent. It's not incorrect. It's just consistent in how we do the things that we do, and have a chance to see how that works with an upgrade.
So maybe it's something that we can think about for sort of our long range planning in the next 5 years, maybe, or 10, to say, okay, we're going to initiate some conversations with our partner districts to make sure we're getting the best value.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Director Klein Jerome.
And Kevin, you won't understand why I'm saying this, but I appreciate the fact we've had a discussion on it, we're voting on it prior to it actually going into implementation. Because when I first got on the board, we were voting on contracts that had already been put in place, which I found totally inappropriate. So I appreciate that timeliness on all of these things have been very good lately. So
Sure.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We move on to discussion items. Item subject 11.01.
So Kevin is going to give us a brief description of our Fall at Destiny management software. So go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. When I wrote this up, I tried to make bullet points because Destiny is a very large component of inventory. I want to make clear that this inventory isn't inventory like our capital inventory, like our vehicles and buildings and real property. This is inventory of textbooks, inventory of library books, inventory of Chromebooks. There are thousands of those out there. It allows us to track that. It allows us from a media center perspective is to be able to check out books, check in books. It ties into our Infinite Campus. It ties into our InTouch system. It's our tracking system for all of our textbooks. If we have textbooks that aren't returned, or if we have textbooks that are damaged beyond repair, we have that inventory to know whether we need to buy textbooks to replace those, or if we have enough on hand with our enrollment to be able to make that determination. Should we buy more, or are we okay where we're at? Destiny is very important. It's used throughout the district in every school building, as well as at our warehouse to maintain that.
Director Beck.
I have two questions on this. So, first of all, is this where we say migration to this cloud? Is this currently, is it housed on one of our servers and we're going to migrate it to their cloud?
Great question. We have been using it on our servers, and whenever there's an update, we'd have to go to each server at each building to update it. By going to the cloud, it reduces our costs and it allows one spot for the upgrade, so everyone is upgraded at the exact same time. It really is a logistics thing that allows us to be down at a shorter time frame when these upgrades happen. That's a great question.
So I guess, and this sort of goes beyond just the library services, but the more things we have in the cloud, the less we have control over them, right? And the more risk we're taking on as cybersecurity becomes, more of an issue. Do we do risk-benefit analyses to make sure we're not going to end up being held ransom, by ransomware?
I can't speak in depth, but I would say that we have just as much threat on our servers as someone doing that as opposed to in the cloud. I would say it's probably safer in the cloud where they do this business every day. Is it going to be foolproof? Absolutely not. None of us can say that at this day and age. but it's better than having our servers. It frees up server time. It frees up staff time. We do have some indirect return efficiency-wise in our staff.
Okay, the staff time is an important one. My other question then is sort of the same one that Director Poston asked about the previous software. We've been on this system for quite a while. It said since 2009, I believe. At what point do we want to make sure that we're getting the best value and we're not just going with this because it's easy?
I would make sure that whatever component of Destiny, that it works with our InTouch and with our Infinite Campus system. So that would be the first question to say, what is the best software that integrates that seamlessly? I can't tell you what that is. I don't know if there's anything else out there.
Okay, so maybe another thing to put on the list for future review.
Absolutely.
And then finally, do we use direct digital access or digital textbooks at all in our schools? And if so, would this track that type of usage as well?
I don't believe this would track digital
Okay.
textbooks, no.
Okay, thank you.
She did only tell you two, Kevin, and she snuck that third one in there.
It's all good.
Any other questions? Director Poston.
And I don't want to beat the subject to death, but there are times, and I've only been on the board for 2 years, but sometimes I get the feeling that companies are out there and they look at a large school district like ourselves, and it's like, okay, we're here for the pickings. We're going to charge as much as we can, or we're going to get away with as much as we can. So when I ask some of these questions, that in the back of my mind, that's what worries me. Okay, so we're just ripe hanging fruit here, just ready for the next company to come along and take advantage of us. So that's what I want to be careful about.
I will say that these companies do watch our board meetings, because when you ask that question enough, they will reach out to you. I've had that happen a few times. I think it's great, but I think we rely on technology way too much nowadays, and I watch too many movies where someone does something and then we can't do anything. So like moving everything to the cloud, then someone hacks that, and then we're toast, we're done. So it's just, I watch too much Netflix is what happens on that. It makes me think of all that stuff.
Could I just say, though, from a teacher's perspective, when I would check out books to kids and have to write down every number on a pad of paper, and now I just need a scanner, and here, this book is checked out to you, put in their number. It is a faster system. It's still some time involved in it, but I've also been the one to have to write down every name and number, and so this is a better.
The implementation of this system 10 years ago saved us thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because it was exactly that. We know exactly where books are, where they're checked because they're scanned. And we have somebody dedicated to this to ensure. Now, COVID did a number on our books and so we have a lot of work to do on that. This system absolutely is critical, whatever one we choose. This system is absolutely critical to tracking our materials
I think
inside of our district.
I think it's tracking, but it's also the efficiency. The best job we can do is to let teachers teach and not have to worry about exactly what you had just mentioned. The more time we can keep them in the classroom teaching and the less time doing processes, the better.
President?
Yes, Director Potts.
Yeah. The other, it's an inventory control device that when I was in the building, the printout would tell us we had 400 8th grade social studies books. And so we'd go and scan and we'd say, okay, wait a second. We could only scan 300 of them. Though we knew there was 100 books someplace. And so in the old days, we would have said, geez, we're short 100 books. And we would have put in an order for the district to get 100 more books for next year. This way we knew they were there, and we had to find where teacher A or B was hiding this little set of books that they hadn't scanned yet. It really also revealed, when we first implemented it, how many textbooks we actually had. That's my 2 cents.
It beats chiseling that stuff in the stone, right? Director Beck.
Quick question. I do miss those cards when you can like look at the history of a book, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, at the library. I know I just dated myself terribly there. So with the cloud, are we able, can students at one school check out a book, and if they move to another school, we don't need to transfer textbooks necessarily?
Should not. And believe me, I spent 17 years typing those cards out for my mother every summer.
Nice. So that actually is nice that we can say, okay, if you're moving to a different school, you just take your textbooks with you, and we can still handle that system,
Yes.
right?
Oh, no, they're not leaving the building, those books.
If it's a classroom set, it'll stay with the classroom, but they'll be
okay.
able to check that book back in and then go to their new building and check that book back out, or whatever textbook they're using.
But it basically, we know who's got what and what. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now, I am assuming that this will be on for an action item on the 9th, correct?
Correct.
Is there any other information that anyone needs to feel comfortable voting on this on the 9th? All right, we'll move on to the next subject, 11.02.
This is a contract between Davenport Community School District and the Mississippi Bend AEA. This is a contracted service. This provides students access to instruction. The need of interpreting services is determined by our IEP teams and is reflected in the individual's IEP. The services in the IEP are determine the number of interpreters that are required, hence this contract here. This is a great service that the AEA provides us, and I'm doing my best to do this one. Kim and I kind of brainstormed this, so I'll do the best I can to answer those questions. And so the AEA hires these. It allows us to be more competitive in a very hard to find arena. And they've done a great job. So when there's a guest teacher or a guest interpreter that's needed, they do everything they can to find that. So this service, this contract really helps close the gap and meet the needs for our students.
You didn't do a very good job. 2 questions here. Director Klein Jerome.
So based on IEPs, we believe we're going to spend the $1,070,000, or could it turn out at the end of the year we didn't need this much? I mean, how did you arrive at this amount?
Again, the great question. This is based off of the IEPs that we have on our staff for the current staffing next year.
And this is coming out of special ed funding?
Correct.
So all of their 14 students that need interpreting services, and so this contract reflects all 14 of those students, as well as Davenport historically has also purchased a floating sub. So if any of their interpreters are absent, they have a built-in sub that they can utilize. On days where, let's say Davenport doesn't need that sub, we will look to see if there's somewhere else we can place that student and then comp you back that time. And so that sub is kind of evened out at the end of the year once we see kind of where they landed on all of those days. So what would change, let's say, as a student moved out of your district, you would not be charged for that interpreter that is right now in that contract. If you had a student moved in, you could be charged an additional interpreter. So they are tied directly to individual students. So that's what we know right now, projecting for next school year.
Okay.
Director Beck.
I just wanted to say I remember discussing this when I was first on the board, or maybe a couple years ago, and the number was surprising, but hearing interpreters is a very skilled position. It takes a lot of training to be able to do it properly. And so it's worth every penny. And it's so important for the students who need the interpreting services to have this here. And it's mandated by law, but it's worth every penny. So I understand, the price tag seems high, but I think it makes sense.
Mr. President?
Director Potts.
Yeah, I think we also need to understand or keep in mind that this figure may actually go up, because when you have a hearing impaired student who wants to participate in any sort of extracurricular or co-curricular activity, they're entitled to have a hearing an interpreter with them to sign for them. So if you have a hearing impaired student who wants to be on the swim team or any wrestling team, any athletic team, or in a play or a drama or something of this nature, we're obligated to have an interpreter available for that child. So this number could fluctuate if we have a number of hearing impaired students who want to participate in a lot of extracurricular activities. This figure could increase.
I shouldn't have let him cut me off. That was what I was going to ask. So I'm assuming this one will be on the 9th too. So my question is it going to be worded with that estimated total not to exceed, and then you have to come back? Or is it on the consent agenda or something for each interpreter as we use them or whatever? So that way we don't have to revisit this again. Because, if it's more or less, obviously we're going to have to take an action on it. But I just want to, like Director Potts said, if it winds up being more, I just want to make sure that we have enough cushion to allow for that. You totally distracted me when I'm trying to look over it.
The intent is it's for the services that they provide. The estimate would not be part of the motion, because it may exceed, it may be less. It's not the amount, it's the services provided. So it's to approve that. We wanted to give you the scope of how much this really is, because it does require board action. It's not a consent item, it is an action item.
It'll mean, so the motion will say to use the Mississippi Bend Area Education Association hearing interpreter
for FY22.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had enough room to either go higher or lower if we needed to. So that answers my question. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we will move on to the next.
This is an agreement that has actually worked very well for Davenport Community School District. This is how we are currently serving our compensatory education, and we have contracted with the AEA at this amount. And basically what we're doing is we're utilizing the services of our own staff members, and in moments where we can't find staff members to fulfill that compensatory education, the AEA helps us find that. And so this is an agreement between the Davenport Community School District and the AEA to help us fulfill our compensatory education needs. And discussing with Kim Hoffman earlier today, we're seeing the number of those hours decreasing, and so the need for this will continue to be evaluated. But right now, we drastically need this with teacher burnout, teacher shortages, things of that nature. This is absolutely critical for us to help meet the needs of our compensatory education. And many of you remember the citations that we received and that large number of comp ed that was owed to students. That was a result of that. It was a wonderful brainstorm between the Davenport schools and the AEA to solve a very unique problem, and it's worked very effectively. And at this time, we believe we still need to continue this.
I got Director Hayes.
And kind of piggybacking on that, with those hours that we previously had, all of those are taken care of, and this is just in the event that we need these services again.
We are continuing. We are chipping away at the compensatory education hours that were there. They are still there. They're still from previous citations. This is getting that down.
Okay. Do we have any idea approximately how many hours we have?
I think that would be an excellent board report. I think that would be a presentation to the school board to see the progress that is being made. So I think I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I think that would be something that we all need to see the progress that's being made towards that. That's a good question.
I got Director Kleindrome, then Director Peck, and maybe Director Potts, it sounds like.
And along with that report, I would like to know how many students still need the compensatory education and how many hours they're entitled to.
Yeah, it would be a great part of that presentation. And as many of you remember from some of those citations, there were years worth of comp ed that IEP teams determined were needed to overcome that. So we're chipping away at that, and that's exactly what this is helping us do.
Director Beck.
So, kind of along the same lines, I know with the COVID pandemic, I've been hearing nationally about reports of families requiring compensatory ed as a result of an inability to get services during the pandemic when we had to pivot so quickly to a shutdown. So I'm just assuming, no district is immune to that. And so is this the type of thing, can we continue with this type of model if we find that we need it for those students as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. We can absolutely continue with it if that's the district's desire to do so. In Iowa, we're calling services lost because of COVID. We're calling them recovery services.
Okay.
So differentiating them from comp ed. So comp ed saying the district agreed to give you something and you just didn't. Okay. So now you owe the family. And recovery is like you didn't really have access because we weren't in school. You didn't have access to instruction. So all of our districts in the AEA have been kind of trained on what that recovery service means, and those are individual IEP decisions just like they are for comp ed. And so those decisions have been ongoing throughout this spring and into the next school year, but we could absolutely use this model. Let's say that Davenport ends up with 100 students that need some type of recovery service. We could use this model if you guys were interested in continuing that partnership.
Okay, thank you for just using the vocabulary distinction there. That makes it a lot easier to follow what body of students we're talking about. I appreciate that. Thank
no
you.
problem.
Director Potts, did you have something?
I have the same curiosity as to how many students. I mean, because this is about 2 years old at this point, I believe. And so, how many students still need compensatory education? How many have declined it? Because I know we had some that declined it, and are we still carrying them as having a need? And what are we? And I know there were students who disappeared, who moved, left, and I guess I'm questioning how long do we need to carry this load, and how big is this load? So I think there's a need for some hard data here. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Director Potts. I think you guys got your marching order, guys and gals. Ms. Hoffman, welcome to the cabinet.
Thank you.
We were reporting that out at every board meeting, and it was a collaborative effort between the AEA and Davenport Schools to compile that data. So we do have a vehicle for how we reported that at every board meeting, and so it's a great report. I think it could also be somewhat of a celebration because we are moving forward and making great progress on that. And when I think back to that, we went across district lines. We did everything we could to ensure that those students received what they didn't get, what they weren't told. And so I'm kind of looking forward to compiling that, actually.
Yes, I think it will definitely be a celebration. The numbers are significantly down.
Director Poston.
Along those same lines as the citations, are we due for another update on all our citations? Is that coming soon?
Yes, actually. We are the August 5th state school board meeting. We will be determining what's the best way, because our citations are being reset. They usually get reset in July, and I'm going to call it our Davenport plan is going to be presented at the state school board meeting, and from there we're going to determine what it is that we want to look at, what we want to report, what we want to see as the Davenport plan for the Davenport School Board. So to answer your question, Kent, we've been reporting out on the major initiative of crisis response violence prevention, and we've tried to give the school board an update every meeting or every other meeting about the progress of that youth leadership teams, how's the training going, things like that. And in the times when we weren't, we put it in our Friday report. And so as we move forward, our early literacy and the implementation of PBIS is exactly what we're going to present on. And a formal way to share that with the school board, the progress where we are, is being developed as we speak by Davenport Schools and the AEA. Great question. Thank you for that.
My last question. When do these contracts need to be approved? Both of them for the AEA. And the reason I ask that is it sounds like the consensus with the board is they would like that presentation probably before we vote on that. I mean, obviously we have to do it, but it would be nice to have all that data before we make that decision to do that. I'm not saying it wouldn't get done, but when would it need to be done by?
I would say by the August 9th meeting, just so that you have services in place for when school starts. As far as having that data to you, I think that would be fairly simple. As TJ said, we have mechanisms to collect and monitor that data. It's just a matter of updating that and providing that to you. So I would leave that up to the board on when you would like that and how you would like that data presented.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Obviously, we'll be taking action on this on the 9th, and it sounds like we might have a presentation on it. Is there any other questions or any information the board members would like to see before we take action on this? All right. That's that. We're done with that. All right, moving on to board request. Holy smokes. It's supposed to be a special meeting here,
I
guys.
haven't put one in a long time.
I believe I have 5 board requests. I might have miscounted there. They might have stuck together. The first board request is from Director Klein Jerome. Data request 7/26/2021. Item requested is an agenda item. Description of request, presentation of district math scores, and discussion of plan in place to increase scores. Are we using math coaches like we do reading coaches? Why are you requesting this information or this agenda item? While literacy is clearly as important area for our students, math is also critical. The board should know how our students are doing and what we are doing to improve math scores. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Poshton got you a little bit there. When would you like this information? ASAP. Next board request is from Director Klein Jerome, 7/26/2021. Item request is an agenda item. Description of request, presentation on how we are using our school libraries to support literacy and provide information on how many school libraries actually have a budget to purchase new books without having to hold their own fundraisers. Also, how are TLC innovators supporting students and literacy?
Second.
He really got you that time. Just came right out. And to be as why are you requesting this agenda item? Our focus this school year is on literacy as well as CRVP, and we should know how librarians are being utilized to support literacy. They have reading backgrounds and should be used to improve literacy with the sense of urgency on literacy. TLC staff should also be working with students, not just coaching teachers. And that was already seconded by Director Poston. Next board request from Director Beck. Date of request 7/26/2021. Item requested, agenda item. Description of request, a comprehensive overview in the spring of each year of all summer programming. Why are you requesting this agenda item? Though not all students necessarily need summer enrichment or programming, it is good for the board and, more importantly, the public to know how we are working to support our students throughout the year. When people lack information, they tend to assume that none exist. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein Jerome. When would you like this agenda item? March or April 2022? Next board request is from Director Snyder. Date of request 7/26/2021. Item requested, agenda item. Have a discussion on requiring students at some point in their education be required to participate in an extracurricular activity. Why are you making this request? Data shows students that get involved in their school have better opportunities to find their passion and in turn do better in school. When would you like this? When the agenda committee can put it on as a discussion item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. I gotta get a drink here. I'm a little parched now. All right. The final board request is from Director Hayes. Date of request, July 26, 2021. Item requested, agenda item. Description of request. Looking to have a presentation on the state of compensatory education hours left in comparison to where we started. Why are you making this request? Just to have an idea where we started in relationship to the citations, where we began our year on old comp hours. When would you like this? September 13th board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. Director Potts, did you have a board request at all?
No, I think you have enough for one meeting.
Well, you could read this one. All right. Seeing no other board requests, we'll move on to administrative reports.
I would like to share one. We have begun the work of moving forward, hiring an architectural firm for our long-range facility planning. That's begun. That will begin this year. Josh Hermansky worked with Jamie Weinzrold to put together a scoring rubric. The interview committee, which consists of Dan Goza, myself, Josh, and a couple of other Davenport school people. I think Bill Schnaden and Jake, Dr. Klipsch, are a part of the interview committee. We're currently scoring the firms. We had, I believe it was 10 people turn their information in. It was very detailed information. The interviews will be conducted very soon. So I just want to commend Josh and Jamie and Kevin for putting together a process that is going to allow us to pick the best team to work with. And so it's very detailed, and it's going to produce great results for us. So
I'm going to add, I've been on this board for a little bit. I've never seen something coming out of the operations department like that. Great, had a nice rubric. You score on these things, had it all laid out. It's all lined out, and then it adds it all up and everything. Never, since I've sat on this board, have I ever seen anything that detailed and actually looking into really doing something. So I, again, want to commend Josh and Jamie. You guys are doing awesome. Greatly appreciate it. Director Beck.
Just one quick question. I know we talked about community input as part of making our final decisions. At what point in the stage do we put have at least a community member?
Very shortly, a community, that was a huge part of the proposal.
Okay.
So there is a stakeholder group and how stakeholders are engaged, and it's quite comprehensive in each one of the proposals. So that's probably the most exciting part. Building something that is long-standing vision of the community. Very excited about it. So that's absolutely probably one of the, if I were to say pillars, that's one of the pillars for.
Director Poston.
Yeah, just one other thing I'd like to throw out to the committee. When you're looking at these various firms, obviously, whatever we end up doing, whether it's new skill buildings or remodeling, whatever, you want quality workmanship and everything like that, but you also want value for your dollar. And when it comes to architects, they scare me, okay? And so we've got to have something that fits Davenport Community School District. We need functional buildings. We don't need a lot of glitz, but we need them functional so it's a good learning environment for the students and the teachers.
I think that's kind of what I bring to the table, because everything looks good on a flat piece of paper, but not in the building. Any other on that? Again, Josh and Jamie, great job. Super impressed. I don't have nothing to compare it to, but I mean, it's a huge step forward. So again, thank you both. Now for everyone's favorite part, key takeaways from tonight, and I will start with the eye in the sky, Director Potts.
2 takeaways. First, that conversation of this Purposity app. To be honest, that's the first I've ever heard of it. It's the first app I've ever figured out how to download on by myself. Okay. But what I like about it is that it's an instant solve for a kid's need, and that's amazing. I'm flabbergasted. That's my biggest takeaway of this. The second was I enjoyed our conversation and discussion on the establishment of the priorities for the Iowa School Board Association's lobbying for the year. I thought we had a very good conversation about that. Very good conversation.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Klein Jerome.
I like the fact that as a district, we're not just educating students, we are also addressing their basic needs and also providing some opportunities through these programs to engage in a dance academy or whatever it happens to be. It isn't just walk in the classroom and walk out and we never think about what's going on. You need a mattress, there's a program to provide that. So I think we're heading definitely in the right direction to address not just the education, but the needs of kids.
Thank you, Director Poston.
No, I agree. The opportunity for all. I did not know anything about it, and I think it's, as Director Klein-Jerome said, we have to address all the needs of the kids, not just the educational needs. And when I go home tonight, I'll have my wife put the app on my phone.
I was going to have my 4-year-old do it for me. Director Beck.
Likewise, I think the opportunity for all presentation, including the Purposity app, was fantastic. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to meet the physical needs of students or just the opportunity needs of students. And the quick turnaround makes it really easy to do. And the fact that it's anonymous and there's an app involved, or if it's more of an experience, there's, a quick turnaround from a teacher or a school counselor saying a student needs money to do this or would like to do this activity. I think that's so important to support our students. And yeah, I guess the second one was it's nice that to have our last cabinet member be introduced and to finally know who everybody is for the next going forward. So
Thank you, Director Snyder.
Well, I think obviously the most important thing tonight, and the only reason I was here is to meet Dr. Barney. So that, and I do really appreciate the opportunity for all presentation. It kind of goes along with my board request, because anytime we have the ability to help a child do something that is important to them, it can mean the absolute world to that kid's success.
Thank you, Director Hayes.
Since Director Snyder threw it out there, I also felt the need that we should be here. I had a headache, and I actually took something on my way here, and I thought I should just stay home. But it went away, so thank you. And the presentations was my favorite part as well. With this, I am so glad that you lead by example. And for us to be leaders of the district, I feel that these programs, where we can, we need to get involved with them and push them, because, all these children are important, and it's hard to see little ones not do something because they're not able to. And, a lot of the disciplinary problems are stemming from things that could easily be solved. If it's nothing but a breakfast sandwich, clean clothes, whatever, a lot of those things could be resolved if we get more in tune to our children. And I feel with these two programs, we are doing that. So kudos to everyone for that. And the second one was to see, as different as we are, how similar we are. Everyone pretty much selected the same things for the IASB. I wrote down everything that everyone said, and there was like 3 items for the most part that all of us wrote the same thing down. So this team is pretty cohesive in that respect as far as wanting the best for the children in the district.
Thank you. Superintendent Schneckloff.
Well, as I was reflecting on our meeting, a next step for our administration team, this is really as our cabinet, our first time going through contract renewal season. And one of the reflections that I take away, and something that we need to put in our practice as an administrative leadership team, is that our board is going to ask us, are these competitive prices? And so we need to build that into our process. And when I reflect back on sitting in the boardroom, I can't really think of a time where we didn't just roll our contracts forward. And I think that stems from a lot of learning, absorbing what we're learning from IASB, the appropriate questions. And so once we recognize that pattern and come out of the contract renewal season, we need to make sure that we are incorporating that in our process. So that was my reflection for the meeting, and I appreciated that, because we should always be going for the best service and deal possible.
Thank you. One of these times I'm gonna trick Brenda into this too.
She'll have an idea if you ask her. I guarantee you that.
All right, maybe next time. A couple of my takeaways. I really like the fact that we're going to get a presentation on all this compensatory education, because we do need to pick up where we left off and make sure that we're getting all those what was owed to those students addressed. And then the other part, like I said, I downloaded the app right here while they were doing the presentation. I think that's a huge thing. It's nice that it's discreet and can be done, and no one has to feel ashamed or anything like that, and you're just able to get it done and help the kids out, because at the end of the day, there's a ton of people out there with a lot of money burning holes in their pockets that they want something to do to feel good about themselves to do it. So otherwise, and the great discussion we've had tonight, I do greatly appreciate working with all of you. You guys all bring something different to the table, and we usually always have good conversation. And I love seeing the majority of the cabinet members here. It's nice because then if we have questions, you're able to answer them instead of just a few people sitting there. So, and my last kudos to Josh and Jamie. Thank you very much on that stuff for that. I'm serious. You have no idea. Director Hayes, Director Snyder could probably even remember that, and Director Potts and Beck. It's been a long time since we've seen anything like that. So again, thank you very, very much. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You guys are all quiet. I'd be like, yeah. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you guys for your flexibility.
Oh, being here.